Hi folks, my name is Reece, and today we're going to be ranking every game I played in 2024 in a classic tier list. I decided to make this a yearly tradition, because I really enjoyed it last year. Before we start, I do want to clarify that each tier will also be in sort of descending order, so that items further to the left of the tier will be sort of higher up in it, closer to the next tier up in terms of how much I enjoy each game, and then going from left to right will be sort of, as I say, in descending order of how much I like them. I just want to clarify that because a lot of people do tier lists and just have each tier be like a flat sort of ranking, whereas I prefer to have a bit more nuance to it. I think that can be quite fun. But yeah, without further ado, I say we get into it. And starting off strong, all the way down in D tier, I'm going to start with Sonic Unleashed. Now, hear me out, because I know to a lot of people this is the best thing since sliced bread, and because of that I was really excited going into the game, but the game falls flat in a multitude of ways. Let me break it down. The day stages, the bit that people love, the bit that people actually want to play, it kinda sucks. Why? Because the levels are not fun to play on the first run through. I get that to a lot of people, part of the fun is replaying the levels to get better and better each time, and well, yes, I have indeed found enjoyment in replaying the levels, finding shortcuts and memorising enemy placements, so on and so forth. That shouldn't be required to enjoy the levels. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, Sonic Generations, Shadow Generations, and heck, even Shadow the Hedgehog. These games all have one thing in common. A lot of their stages, at least in my experience, were fun to play through on the first go, with replays only bringing more enjoyment. You can do both. Sega has done both, but Unleashed barely manages one. That's not to mention the fact that unless you use a guide, you're forced to go against the main aspect of Sonic gameplay and slow down in order to find the mandatory collectibles in the Sun and Moon medals. Which is where I actually think the night stages are better overall. The platforming is solid, the combat, while a little sluggish, is simple with most combat scenarios not taking too long, and collecting the Sun and Moon medals has you actively engaging in puzzle platforming and exploration, which are two of the main focuses of the Werehog. Of course, the Werehog still sucks because it just isn't Sonic in terms of gameplay, but in the context of Unleashed, if you don't think about any of the other games, you just focus on Unleashed, it is the better of two evils, I think. So yeah, overall, while I wish it wasn't the case, I really don't think Sonic Unleashed is all it's cracked up to be. Sorry, Sonic fans. And next up, hear me out. Of course, Sonic 06 goes as low as possible because, well, it's Sonic 06. But there's a few reasons I put this game ever so slightly above Unleashed. To start, the level design. Where stages in Unleashed revolve around you memorising the levels to get better, 06 harkens back to the days of Adventure 2 with more optional routes and areas you need later upgrades to access, encouraging replayability without the frustration of how could I have possibly seen that coming. You don't need a crystal ball to enjoy these levels. Just crystal meth. I also just generally enjoy how similar to the adventure games it is. The story is nonsensical and frankly weird as it is, gives each of Sonic's friends a significant presence in all three stories which converge into a final act, in a structure that's very similar to Adventure 1 and 2. Unleashed, by comparison, in terms of its narrative, focuses heavily on Sonic and Chip, and while that's fine, we are playing a Sonic game after all. I just prefer when Sonic's friends have their own slice of the pie, even if we don't play as them, because God knows they botched that in Adventure 2. It's still nice to see them actually contribute to the plot as opposed to literally just being a way of getting from A to B. Of course, there's no way to get around just how abysmal this game is overall. The characters are more sluggish than ever, with some being just about serviceable. Blaze, you are truly a queen, and I'm sorry Sega did this to you. Thank you for being my semi-competent light in the darkness. And some just... why? And while you might not be forced to grab collectibles that go against the main gameplay formula, you instead have to suffer with mandatory side quests, most of which, quite frankly, suck. That aside, there are other more technical problems that I can't really touch on as I emulated the game in my first playthrough, but I doubt my opinion could get much lower anyways, and the few positives this game has would still stand out regardless of loading times and lag. Overall, Sonic 06 is wasted potential incarnate, and quite frankly one of the only games in the series where I feel my opinion actually lines up with the rest of the fanbase. Okie dokie, moving on to C tier now, because I don't think anything can get quite as bad as those two. And I think I'm going to start with content warning. If you enjoy games like Lethal Company and Phasmophobia, you'll probably get a kick out of content warning as well. I know I did around the time it launched, with minor optimization issues being the only thing really dampening the experience. Unfortunately, it is very similar to Lethal Company, especially, with the only thing really helping it stand out being the recording footage gimmick, which, while fun to sit and laugh at with your mates, isn't really enough to make me prefer this over those other games. It's still a decent game though, and I'm sure it'll be good for a quick sesh every once in a while. And following on from that, I reckon I'm going to go with Rooftops and Alleys. Now, Rooftops and Alleys, the last time I bought a game in early access was when the Skate Simulator Session released on Xbox. Oh, would you look at that, I'm 2 for 2 on early access street sports simulators. Neat. Anyway, I had a blast with Rooftops and Alleys. Parkour is fun and fluid, the maps are well designed, with the school district and construction site being my personal favourites, and the modding scene is super active, with maps from games like Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 being ported into the game and, for the most part, fairly playable, with a few hiccups like not being able to climb where you'd expect to be able to, especially if you have the muscle memory from playing those games. Overall, Rooftops and Alleys is a game I'm excited to see evolve, and I especially can't wait to see what else modders can bring to the table. Alright, and moving on to B tier, the bulkiest tier of the tier list, we've got Phasmophobia. Phasmophobia is a game I wish I played sooner. As a teenager, I was really into creepypasta and horror games in general, especially Slender Man, Outlast and the like. So having a game centered around paranormal investigation, it just scratches a particular itch for me. It's not a game I have too much to say on, it's not particularly in-depth or anything, but I always enjoy hopping in both solo and with friends. It's just a lovely little game overall. And moving on after that, we've got Mirror's Edge Catalyst. If I had a great British pound for every cult classic centered around fluid first-person parkour that got a mid-sequel, I would have £2. Which is a little too real, but also odd that it happened twice. However, I do have a soft spot for this game. It released smack dab in the middle of my high school years, and right around the summer period too, so I have fond memories of getting home from a good day at school with my friends, the sun's shining, I'm out of my uniform and into my comfy stuff, and I've settled down to play this cool new game until the sun goes down. Even just standing and staring at the game with its futuristic setting and visual effects galore, it brings me back. It definitely isn't all positive though, where the first game was so finely crafted that its bright colours would stand out and guide you along. Catalyst's nature as an open world prevents it from doing that nearly as often, with first time players very likely to fall to their death because the commercial building with benches and advertisements clearly meant for civilians didn't have a railing. What I do prefer in this game is its approach to combat. For the average player, combat scenarios in the first game meant slowing to a crawl. Catalyst's combat is made with fluidity in mind, with enemies placed throughout levels in such a way where you can give them a little love tap and carry on running, and combat arenas being mostly designed in a way to actually facilitate parkour. This allows Catalyst to have a pretty consistent pace throughout the story, where the first game is pretty stop and start. Overall, I do enjoy Catalyst. It has its flaws, but it also has some positives that put it roughly on par with the first game. And following on from that, I'm gonna say Twilight Princess. To me, Twilight Princess is one of the weaker entries in the series. Out of the games I've played so far, that is. But it's by no means a bad game, there's just a few more things, major and minor, that sort of bring the whole product down overall compared to the other games in the series. Wolf Link was a bit of a disappointment, especially in combat, and given its lack of advantages over regular Link, outside of very specific scenarios in which you need to be a wolf, I found myself reluctant to transform unless I absolutely had to. That might be the point of it, but I don't know, I just didn't find the wolf fun at all. On the plus side though, Twilight Princess has some of my favourite tools in the series, especially the spinner and the Dominion Rod. Those were really fun in their respective dungeons. But speaking of which, the dungeons were also fairly middle of the road in terms of quality, especially you, and you. But some of them were quite fun. The art style though, I love it. I have such a soft spot for that mid-2000s aesthetic of too much bloom, and the occasional piss filler also scratches that itch. It's great. All in all, a decent Zelda game, but definitely not my favourite. And bish bash bosh, nah, episode Aigis. I won't linger on this one for too long as I'm still writing my video on the DLC, but it's safe to say I'm not the biggest fan. The answer has always been a controversial topic, of course, due to a particular section of the story, with Yukari being a particular point of contention among fans for her behaviour. And episode Aigis attempts to fix this by having the characters be more civil towards each other in this section, showing a maturity that really doesn't fit with the scene, considering this is meant to show these characters at their most flawed. This misrepresentation of the characters takes the penultimate act of the narrative and makes it a nonsensical mess. The DLC does have some redeeming qualities like visual upgrades and reload exclusive gimmicks and mechanics that I'll get to when I talk about the main game, but overall I think episode Aigis is mostly a downgrade from the original. Moving on, I'm gonna put Final Horizons up next. While not perfect, I had a pretty good time with it. The other characters were pretty cool, with Amy being my favourite for her platforming capabilities. Knuckles' sections were just a bit too finicky for my liking, and Tails is straight up broken once you upgrade him. But overall, I enjoy the new styles of gameplay. It's a nice change of pace. That's not to mention the new platforming sections in the open zone are a massive step up from the puzzles in the base game. Don't get me wrong, I think those work in moderation as decent downtime, but Sonic is all about platforming, so it was a sight for sore eyes after its fleeting presence in the base game. The lowest point of the DLC, however, is in the Tower Trials and the Master King's Trial. The Tower Trials were just not fun in the slightest, let alone useful, since most of the enemies you fight in them don't even show up in the Final Horizon. And the Master King's Trial forces you to fight the Titans with the perfect parry mechanic, with no changes being made to accommodate this fundamental change in gameplay. It is all worth it though, because the final boss fight is beyond hype, with each cutscene looking like it was pulled straight out of an anime in the best way possible. Oh my god, I love this game. Final Horizons, it has its flaws, but I think the positives balance it out. Okay, wrapping up B tier, I'm going to throw Sonic Frontiers up in here. Sonic Frontiers is a very 50-50 game. On one hand, this is the best Sonic has controlled since the first adventure game, being able to turn and stop on a dime and just overall being very manageable and predictable, or reliable rather, compared to the franchise's worst offenders. The boss fights are also incredible showcases of pure spectacle, and the soundtrack is sublime. On the other hand, the game falls short in two key areas: the story and the open zone. I won't go into specifics, but here's your spoiler warning in case you want to experience the entire story for yourself. Already? Good. By the end of the game, Sonic's friends have all essentially returned to their adventure characteristics, each showing more confidence and a desire for independence, which is great. How do they get there? They sit around and think while Sonic does all the work. Don't get me wrong, it is a reasonable explanation. It makes sense logically. You're stuck, so you're just gonna sit and think while you have the chance. I just don't find it very compelling as a story, and I personally prefer when the characters are more proactive in their own development. I did also touch on the open zone in the Final Horizon segment, so I won't talk about it too much here, though I will add that the simple addition of proper physics and momentum works wonders to make the act of exploring the world better, and the next open zone game would do well to implement that, along with the focus on platforming seen in the DLC. Overall, Sonic Frontiers is the reset the franchise needed to get back on track, and despite its rough patches, I have hope for the future of the franchise. Alright, and here we have Persona 3 Reload at the bottom of A tier. It's a high quality game, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of minor things that bring the whole thing down for me. The art style, especially during cutscenes, has taken a hit from the original PS2 release, where before there was a more distinct art style that really sold the darker tone of the game as a whole. Reload's cutscenes, while undoubtedly a higher quality and production value, are just generic, pretty anime. At least the in-game world is a straight upgrade visually. That I can appreciate. I also feel that some of the Reload exclusive stuff is kind of just shoehorned in, with little consideration for the natural structure and flow of the game. Nothing was removed from the original story, so it's very clear when a Reload event is happening, because they usually happen just very suddenly with little setup or reason for them to actually happen. The introduction of the new C-Gear is a particularly bad example of this. Don't get me wrong though, there's still a lot to love here. The gameplay is as solid and fun as you'd come to expect with a Persona game, with Theurgy being a fun, if a little OP, addition to the combat, and the new Tara's gimmicks make dungeon crawling a blast every time. Not to mention, oh my god, not to mention the social life element being better than ever, with the addition of fully voiced social links. It does make such a difference. All in all, while I still think Persona 5 Royal is the best introduction to the series, Persona 3 Reload is a great game in its own right. Just play Persona 3 Fez at some point as well, if you can. And following on from that, a game I completed very recently, within days of recording this, I'm going to put Sonic Project 06 right here. This game is good. You know what I said about Sonic 06 being wasted potential incarnate? Project 06, for the most part, realises that potential. From simple things like the character models being rigged in such a way as to make them more lifelike as opposed to the aliens we got in Sonic 06, to more major improvements like adjusting the physics and the movesets of each character to better accentuate the quite brilliant level design from the original Sonic 06, which, as far as I know, hasn't been touched too much. There are a few sections that I have noticed have been adjusted or removed, particularly with Silver's levels, but not in such a way where it is unrecognisable as Sonic 06. This is still very clearly Sonic 06, but as I say, it just realises the potential that was lying very deep under the surface in Sonic 06. Chaos X has done such a good job so far with this game. It's great. I'm looking forward to when the bosses and the final story are introduced, especially because I've already S-ranked all the stages in what we have so far. Yeah, Project 06, nothing but good things to say. And following from that, we are going to go with Skyward Sword HD. Now, this was the first in my big Zelda series playthrough. I mean, it's not the whole series because I'm just playing the 3D games. I am a fake fan after all, but I really enjoyed my time with Skyward Sword. The story is as solid as ever, with a memorable cast of characters, including my favourite depictions of Link and Zelda so far, not to mention my guy Groove. The softer art style is also a treat to the eyes, the music is memorable, no surprise there, and the gameplay is actually better than I thought it'd be. The stick-based sword combat took a little getting used to, but by the end of the day I was hacking and slashing and loving life. I also enjoyed the overall structure of the game, with most chapters, if you will, having you return to one of the 3 main regions, with new gimmicks and tools leading to new areas to explore, as opposed to the typical structure of entirely new area for each part of the story from the earlier entries, from what I've experienced. It's neither better nor worse, of course, I just think it's different. I like it, and I like this game overall. I think it's neat. Wrapping up A tier, I'm gonna throw Animal Crossing New Leaf up here. Now, I had this game back when it first came out, probably as a birthday or Christmas present or something, but I've never properly played Animal Crossing until now. I have a house on a sibling's New Horizons island, so I had a grasp on the basics going into New Leaf, but actually experiencing everything properly in my own town was so much fun. The gameplay loop is super chill, the vibes are immaculate every hour of the day, the music is catchy as all heck aside from 10 AM. I really do not like New Leaf's 10 AM. I don't know why. I just don't. Anyway, I don't have very many chill games. Most of the games I play are either story heavy, or action oriented, super immersive, or maybe all 3 and more, so having a game with very little in the way of stress is a brilliant change of pace. Okay, I'm rounding things out with S tier to what I believe might be a few people's surprise, actually. We've got Sonic X Shadow Generations up in S tier. I make it no secret that I do not enjoy a lot of Sonic games. From bad level design and questionable enemy placement, to sluggish gameplay and a general lack of polish, this franchise is home to some of the worst games I've ever played. Fortunately, Sonic X Shadow Generations isn't one of them. To start, Sonic Generations is incredible. The gameplay is a massive refinement of Unleashed's boost formula, with tighter controls and more emphasis on platforming as a result, and not to mention classic Sonic is also a grand old time, especially considering my only experience with 2D Sonic has been through the modern games, which to me aren't great presentations of that style of gameplay, especially with the modern physics. But Shadow Generations is a whole nother level. The solid foundation of Frontiers' gameplay has been polished to a shine, and the levels themselves are a blast from start to finish. The story is also a joy to experience, with it re-exploring the themes of Shadow the Hedgehog in order to bring his characterization back to something good again. Similar to how I mentioned Sonic Frontiers does it. All in all, Sonic Generations is a huge leap up from the mess that is Unleashed, and Shadow Generations is my personal pick for Game of the Year. Alright, after that, I'm gonna put Death Stranding up here. I had no idea how I'd feel about Death Stranding before I started playing it, where with a lot of games I have a general idea of whether I like or dislike it. Death Stranding's controversial reputation left me, more than anything, curious. But of course, I enjoy immersion, I enjoy when games just let me walk around and soak in the environment, so I was always gonna love this game. The gameplay is both super fun and relaxing at the same time, with the simple act of walking being a major mechanic in and of itself, along with planning routes and, failing that, making your own path with the various bits of equipment you get throughout the game. The story, the writing in particular, is one of the weaker aspects of the game, with characters doing a little more than spelling out their development and the themes of the game constantly. It's a lot of tell, not a lot of show. There are some cutscenes that make up for this, in particular the late game cutscenes with Hartman, where you're talking purely about the science of the world. Those are really cool. It gives me Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West vibes. But in general, the dialogue is very hit or miss. Overall, Death Stranding is a brilliant game, and I'm really excited to eventually replay it and prep for the sequel. And here we go. Then there were two. These two flip-flop on the daily, honestly, but right now I think I'm going to have to put Ocarina of Time up next. I went into this game skeptical. I remembered it being a very difficult game, having played the 3DS version up until the first visit to Hyrule Castle, at which point my 10-year-old self somehow got very lost and put the game down. Of course, the ascent of Death Mountain was no match for my big adult brain, especially when you actually pay attention to the dialogue, you frickin' idiot, and I beat the game. Twice. And I loved it. The gameplay is simple but fun, the dungeons are all pretty consistent in their quality, if a little confusing at times, and the story is, again, simple but a fun, grand adventure across time, with a lot of emphasis on subtext and implication, and not spelling things out for you, which I enjoy. Overall, more than deserving of S tier, to the surprise of nobody, I hope. And finally, there can only be one, Majora's Mask. This game, it's good. Majora's Mask expands upon the foundation set by Ocarina of Time in pretty much every way. Where Ocarina basically had one big side quest in the trading quest line, Majora's whole gameplay loop centers around the completion of numerous side quests, each rewarding you with a new mask that then allows you to access more side quests, and on, and on, and on, all while trying to beat the main dungeons and save the world in an addictive but oppressive 3-day time limit, usually culminating in the perfect run, where you beat all your favourite side quests to save as many people as you can before facing the final boss. There's no need to do this, of course, you can just ignore side quests that you've already beaten, but where's the fun in that? The gameplay is incredible, as always. These games truly were pioneers of 3D games in general. The story and the characters are super compelling. The Land of Termina is a blast to explore, with nooks and crannies in every corner, new secrets and side quests to find, and the music is absolutely stellar. Majora's Mask is regarded as one of the games of all time, and with a product that holds up this well nearly 25 years on, it's no wonder why. And that is a wrap for this video, and also a wrap for content in 2024. As I say, this year has been jam-packed with gaming. On Twitch, at least. And in my free time. I've played a lot of games in my free time, of course, including the Zelda games. But I've kind of neglected this channel, the YouTube channel. It has kind of turned into a reaction channel, with the Twitch and my VODs channel being more of a focus. And I want to change that in the coming year. I don't know how yet. I don't know what I want to do with this, but I'll think of something. And it'll be fun. So feel free to stick around for that. But with the mention of 2025, I have a lot of games that I want to play in my free time over the next year, with a lot of sequels coming out, from Death Stranding 2 to Dying Light the Beast, and of course Ghost of Yote. I believe are all confirmed for a 2025 release. So once I've edited and uploaded this, I'm going to be diving headfirst into Dying Light. It's been many years since I last played Dying Light. I think the last time I played it would have been 2017, just before Red Dead 2 came out. So yeah, it's been a while, and I've never played the following either. I've heard nothing but good things about that, so I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, I've never played Ghost of Tsushima before, so I'm really looking forward to hopping into that. I've heard it's a mixed bag. I've heard the DLC is better than the main game. I don't really know, but I'm looking forward to finding out. It's a game that I've always been meaning to play since I got the PS5, but I never really had a chance to. And of course, at some point soon, I will be carrying on my personal Zelda series playthrough. I'm taking a bit of a break after finishing Twilight Princess. I've kind of been really focusing on the Zelda games over this past year, so I want to take a little break, play something else. I reckon I'll get through at least the main game of Dying Light before I touch on Wind Waker. But yeah, that's going to be it for now. Streaming will resume towards the end of January, the start of February. I'm not sure what we'll be playing yet. We'll probably start off simple with more of the continuous Minecraft or Sea of Thieves series. Yeah, as I say, that is going to be it for us for this year. I hope you've had a good Christmas if you celebrate. If not, I hope you've had a good winter period. Maybe spend some time with friends or family or whatnot. Play some games, maybe treat yourself to something on the old Steam sale. Yeah, I'm going to stop yapping. Thank you very much for watching, I do appreciate it. If you like the video, give it a like, throw a sub and whatnot. Follow me on Blue Sky. I want to push the Blue Sky because I eventually want to phase off of Twitter eventually, because that place is a hellscape. You can still follow me on Twitter, of course, if you want to, but I really would recommend moving over to Blue Sky. It's fun, quite chill. You can, of course, also find me on Twitch. It's all under the same username, ReeceNotRyhs. I'll throw links down in the description. Feel free to check me out over on those places. Give me a follow. We have fun. But I'm going to love yous and leave yous. Have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week. Good rest of your year. We're that close to the end now that I can say that. And hopefully I will see you for whatever comes next in 2025. But until then, take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay warm, and goodbye.